All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, today we're going to be looking at famous American soldiers who joined World War One. Now, some of these guys went into World War One already famous, and some of these guys became famous during World War One because of what they did as a soldier and stuff like that. And then there were some people who became famous after World War One. They did things with their lives after the war was over, and people were like, "Oh, hey, you were a veteran, World War One, things like that." So, we're gonna be looking at that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So here is your warm up picture, and this was a question a lot of people had to ask themselves: What were you going to do during this time of war? Because our nation is basically united, in fighting this war, and you're basically told, "Hey, if you're a guy, especially if you're a guy, you're gonna fight or you're gonna work." Because you got to do something. If you're going to fight, go fight overseas and things like that. If you're going to work, that means you're going to sacrifice here at home. You're going to do whatever work you need to do to help the war effort. You're going to sacrifice not eating, a whole meal. You're going to, cut back on food, recycle, and things like that. So a lot of stuff were asked of citizens during this time. And so, which one would you choose? And if you're a lady, and again, same position too, what would you rather do? Would you go fight in the front lines or would you work? Okay. So, which one would you do and why? Okay. Now, here's the thing. Like I've said in the past, I've had a lot of students go, "Oh, I will go fight. I will go fight." Hey guys, there ain't no shame in the game of not going to fight. Okay. There isn't. Okay. Not everyone has that to go out there and sacrifice themselves for people's freedoms and things like that. It's it's really, again, it's a calling. That's why a lot of respect is given to soldiers because they do things that other people just can't do. They can't bring themselves to do. Okay, so go with what you feel. And again, no one's gonna read this but me. So okay, so go ahead, pause the video, write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right, so here we're going to go through some of the civilian soldiers, from America. The first one, God, when I read about this guy, it was like, wow, what he went through. His name is Henry Johnson. That's a picture of him up on top there. Um, he started off being drafted, and he was used mainly for manual labor. So they needed trees be cut, a road to be created, things like that. He was a guy to do that kind of stuff. But then what happened was the French army was losing numbers, and they were asking the U.S., "Hey, can you lend us some soldiers? We're running low." So America said, "Okay, yeah," and they basically said, "Hey, you're now going to be transferred from cutting down trees to fighting in the front lines for the French or with the French army." So that's what him and another guy named Needham Roberts, they both took positions in the woods. Now remember, this is like 1914, 1915, and during war. It's not like you can have a street lamp over your head. You're in total darkness. So imagine trees everywhere, right? You're on like on a hill, and all of a sudden you're just sitting there listening, trying to see if you can see something through the moonlight, right? At about 2 a.m., 20 German soldiers are creeping through the forest, and Johnson and Roberts see them and they start firing, start shooting, right? Well, here's the thing, right away, both guys get hit with bullets and they're both wounded. Now, from my understanding, Needham Roberts, his shot, hurt him more. Like he was like close to dying type of thing. So he couldn't do much. But Henry Johnson could. And what he did was he basically took all the grenades from himself and his guy, the guy Roberts. He took the pins out, threw them out there, took his rifle, bah, 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 start shooting out there, and then his gun jammed, right? Now, here's the thing. This was some students go, well, why didn't he take his other guy's gun? Well, the guy needed to defend himself too, just in case the Germans got to his point. He would need his gun, so he didn't take it. He used his own gun. But when that gun jammed, he jumped out of his foxhole. He's running out there, and he's using it as a club, just hitting the Germans and bashing them in the heads and things like that. Right? Using the bayonet to stab them, things like that. Well, when he cracked one of the German people, he broke his gun. And it's like, oh, dang it. So then he basically took out his knife and started stabbing them. Start going one after the other, start stabbing them. And the German people started retreating. Now, by this point, he's like, oh my God. He's exhausted. He's that adrenaline, that fight just kept driving him. Um, while he was fighting and going just buck wild on these German soldiers, he was shot and stabbed a combination of 21 times. Yeah, and the thing is, again, his adrenaline, his to keep fighting, he just kept going. And it wasn't until afterwards he realized, oh, dang, I'm shot and stabbed like crazy. Now, when he gave his report about what happened, people were like, no way. And then they looked at his body, and yeah, he's stabbed and shot. His Roberts is shot, things like that. So the French army basically said, dude, wow, you're amazing. So they gave him like the highest French honor, the medals and recognition, things like that, right? And when stories of him follow him when he goes back home to America, he receives no acknowledgement, no awards, no ceremony, no decorating him a hero, nothing. He's just another black man, and that's it. So the guy you see on the bottom, that is Alvin York. And this guy has a very interesting story. Basically, he was an army soldier and he tried to get out of being a field soldier. He was like, I'll be in the medical tent, I'll be the stretcher bearing guys, I'll be the ones, taking guys from the field on the stretcher out to the medical tents because he goes, I can't kill. It's against my religion. He was very, very religious, very, very Christian, and took the Ten Commandments literally, like, thou shalt not kill, you know. But the thing is, the U.S. Army's like, we've heard that one before. Good try. No, you're gonna fight. And the thing was about Alvin York was, believe it or not, he was actually a really good shot. You know, I believe he grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and he was a really good shot because he would shoot things like squirrels and things like that. So he was a great sharpshooter. He could kill if he wanted to. And that's what happened. One very famous battle, he basically outflanked an entire German army and he killed about 20 of them, you know, shot and killed 20 of them, and basically captured 132 German soldiers all by himself. He had them marching towards the Allies. And when the Allies saw through their binoculars, some of that going, wait, why are they have their hands up and marching? Like, what army? Where's this army at that's captured all these guys? And they were like, it's one dude. One guy captured 132 men. You don't believe me? Look it up yourself. It's true. All right. So that's what he was famous for. Okay. Um. Now this next guy was, if you've seen the movie like Top Gun, the hothead type of that. This is the legitimate dude. Okay. His name was Frank Luke. He was known as the Balloon Buster. Now, what are balloons? Okay, back in the day, they used to have hot air balloons. That's one thing, true. But the other big thing was the Zeppelins, the blimps. If you've ever seen a football game, they show the aerial view of a blimp. Yeah, that's what they used, during World War One, the Zeppelin. And if you have world history, if you had me last year, you should remember that. Okay, so what this guy would do is he would take his plane and shoot down those balloons, shoot down the zeppelins, right? And he was known for having this cocky attitude, like, man, I'm the man, I'm chingon, you know. There's nothing in. I always win my fights, and he was known for being very reckless. Because remember, these planes are the first planes actually used during war, and he's just going through maneuvering whatever which way he wants to. And in fighting in air, a lot of these guys try to keep, you know, their their ranks and try to be coordinated. And this guy's just going every which way and getting in ways of other people trying to attack another plane. He's getting in their way, or almost clipping them, So he was known for being reckless. And he at one point had 18 victories in 18 days, which is pretty impressive at that time, meaning dogfights in the air. 18 days, 18 fights, 18 wins. Now, the thing is, he died because he was given, they were told, hey, there's these Zeppelins that are leaving this area. We're not going to engage them. We're not going to attack them. We're going to focus over here. And he decided, no, I'm a balloon buster. I'm going to attack those. So he went off on his own. He was disobeying a direct order, and he ended up going against these three balloons. And these balloons are not, they don't sound like they don't have any guns on them. They do, and they have support, which is other airplanes. And he eventually died from his injuries from that battle because, again, he was by himself. So, yeah. Now, this dude, to if you have any Marines in your family and they've been there in the Marines for some years, they'll tell you about Dan Daly. Dan Daly is considered the most famous and greatest Marine of all time. Basically, they look at like he's the pinnacle. He's what a Marine should be. You know, there's a bar standard. This is the dude. This is where you're supposed to be at. So before the war even started, as you can see in this picture, he has two medals of honors, which is the highest decoration a soldier can get. He already has two of them. And the thing is, people are like, how the heck did this guy already have two medals of honor? Well, at one particular battle, Belleau Wood, he and his men, they're taking, cover. They're being attacked, bullets coming at them, things like that. And he was like, we can't just sit here and cover. We got to attack. We got to counterattack, because they're coming after us. And what are we going to do when they get right to us? You know, And so he basically said, this is it. And he does one of those like Hollywood type of things where he stands up while bullets are flying by him and things like that. And he orders his men, come on, let's attack. And people are like, dude, are you crazy? And then he famously says, come on, you SOBs. Do you want to live forever? Now, he didn't actually say SOBs, but he actually said the words. But yeah, and they charged and they won the battle. Now, his suicidal courage that happened on June 10th, 1918, and this is again where he showed that, hey, I'm Chingon, I'm the man. And if you later on, you'll get a layout of the trenches, how the trenches worked and things like that. And this is where you should really look at it because the thing is, he he himself crossed through the barriers, jumped the first trench, the first, barrier in between, the holes. He jumped that, went into the machine gun nest, where basically these two guys with the machine guns are just aiming, shooting in that direction. He jumped the line, went to them, took them out, killed the commander, and then inside there's like a barracks. He took 14 people prisoner. Now, here's the thing, just doing that's impressive for one day. That's like, whoo, hero for the day, right? No, 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 no. Later on that day, he make the way to another trench area, excuse me, And there's a place between the two trenches, which I mentioned before in previous lesson, called No Man's Land, where each side has their machine guns. They have soldiers looking over the trenches, through the barbed wire, through the bomb holes and everything. There's nothing there. It's like plain field, holes and things like that. Dead people, dead horses, and things like that. Nobody goes through there at all. This guy, because he saw there were some wounded soldiers out in no man's land, this guy went out there, bullets flying at him, from the Germans, and he's pulling, dragging these soldiers from no man's land to the trench line so they can get medical attention. And he did this. He didn't do this just for one guy. He did this for several guys. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 guys. He saved that way, going up in no man's land again, dragging this guy. Again, true bravery. I mean, absolute bravery. Now, here's the thing. He was actually recommended. They were like, this guy's amazing. This guy's the man above all men when it comes to fighting in war. We should give him a third Medal of Honor. But the thing is, the military is like, we were just hesitant on getting him two, but that's because he truly earned it. Um, Three? We never given anyone three, never. So they felt, instead of giving him that, let's give him the Distinguished Service Cross, and then the French are going to give him their highest medal, which is the Medallion of the Military. So instead of getting three medals of honor, in which he would be the only person with three, he ends up being uh, one of two people with two medals of honor. All right, so here's some authors, artists, and actors who joined the military or joined the during World War One. Ernest Hemingway was a famous journalist and an author, a poet, things like that. This guy was an amazing writer. But what happened was, when he signed up, he was rejected because he had an eye defection. They told him, "Dude, you really can't see that well. Um, we appreciate you enlisting, but we can't have you as a soldier." So what he did was he joined the Red Cross and told them, "Hey, I still want to help out. I still want to serve in some way. What could I do?" And they basically told him, "You could be an ambulance driver. Drive to the front lines, pick up the wounded, bring them back to the medical tents." So that's what he did. This guy you see in that picture right there, that's Humphrey Bogart, the king of cool. Now, before during the war, he joined the Navy and he transported soldiers from boat to land and land to boat. Okay, that was his job. Now, after the war, he went to Hollywood and became this iconic uh, actor. And you can see him in movies like The African Queen, The Maltese Falcon, Casablanca, you know, great movies. Okay. The next guy, F. Scott Fitzgerald. He's most noticeably for what he did in his book from the 1920s called The Great Gatsby. Now, some of you guys probably read this, and if you went to a regular high school, uh, but if you haven't, chances are you might not have read this book. It's also a movie. There's two of them, an old one and a new one. So if you have a chance, check it out. It's pretty good. Okay. Now, Horace Pippin was an African American. He was drafted to fight, but the thing is, during the war, he really didn't get to fight. He was one of those people who did the manual labor, or he was like one of the cooks and things like that. But what he became famous for was in the 1920s, during the Harlem Renaissance, he became a very, very successful artist and very influential artist. Uh, and we'll be talking about him when we get into the Roaring Twenties and stuff like that. So keep his name back of your head. Same thing with this other guy, Bill Bojangles Robinson. Now Robinson did not fight at all, at all. He wasn't a cook. He wasn't doing like the manual labor. But what happened was Bojangles was already an accomplished entertainer. He was a dancer, a singer, very, very amazing dancer at the time. And the thing is, the army basically drafted him so he could entertain the troops. Now they told him, "Hey, we'll give you money to entertain the white troops." So what Jangles did basically goes, "Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll make you guys a deal." Tells the U.S. government this: you don't have to pay me, okay, but I get to entertain the black soldiers as well. But if you say I can't entertain the black soldiers, well, then you got to pay me a bunch of money. So the U.S. governments, they're no idiots, and they go, so we don't pay you, and you entertain both groups. But if we only entertain one group, we have to pay you. And he's like, yeah, and they're like, okay, entertain both groups. So that's what he did. He basically made sure that there was equality. Hey, if I'm going to entertain white soldiers, I got to entertain black soldiers. You know, so uh, he deserves a lot of respect, for doing that. Now, some other noticeable Americans: Edwin Hubble. Now, some of you guys might hear that last name and be like, I've heard that word before, Hubble, Hubble. Well, the thing is, he was an astronomer, and he discovered after World War One in the 1920s, excuse me, in the 1930s, he discovered that the universe is actually expanding. People thought the universe was set in stone and that's it. And he realized through mathematics and observation that no, the universe is actually still growing. It's still expanding. Now, the word you would hear Hubble is if you heard about the Hubble telescope, the telescope that's in space and it takes pictures of um, galaxies far away and stuff like that. They named that telescope after him because of his discovery. Okay. Now, the next guy um, was one of the baddest baseball players at this time. His name was Tyrus Ty Cobb. Okay, now before World War One, he was already an accomplished baseball player. Okay, and what happened was he like baseball was seen as like a jokester thing. People would do these weird wind ups and things like that. And he took the game very seriously. And you can see from this picture, yes, he is kicking a dude right in the growing area. And those shoes, those cleats, they didn't have plastic spikes. They had real spikes, like real nails. So if you see that expression on that guy's face getting kicked in the junk, yeah, that's with nails on the bottom of the shoes being kicked in that area. Yeah. So he played for the Detroit Tigers and the Philadelphia Athletics. And at the time of his retirement, he had basically every hitting record. People think, oh, Babe Ruth is the greatest of all time. Before Babe Ruth, it was Ty Cobb. And Ty Cobb still holds records to this day. Two of them are the highest career batting average, which is at 366, and the total batting title, which is like 11 or 12. And it doesn't really matter which one it is because that's the most that anyone's ever had. Another baseball player was Christopher Christie Mathewson. Now he joined the army and he, ended up being one of the best pitchers throughout the 1920s and 30s, and he played for the New York Giants and the Cincinnati Reds. And this last guy, he was during the World War One, he was a catcher, for the St. Louis Browns. He served in the army as well. But what he's most famous for, not is what he did as a baseball player, it's what he did when he was a general manager. When he was the general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Branch Rickey had this idea, plan, and he needed somebody special to help him fulfill this plan. And that was to break the color barrier. It was an unwritten rule that said, only whites, but there was no official rule in the rule book saying only white players can play. Okay. So that's why he needed somebody who could take the punishment and get through that. And it was Jackie Robinson. Okay. So, and everyone knows about Jackie Robinson, what he did, but the guy who believed in him, the guy who signed them and had that vision of, African Americans should be playing baseball was Branch Rickey. Now, here's the thing: not every actor, athlete, and celebrity served in the war. Okay, not every one of them joined, entertained troops, things like that. Um, there were people who, like Charlie Chaplin and things like that, famous actors and athletes who were like, "Yeah, I'm not going to join the army, but I'll help out. I'll help out at home, whatever I can do." And there was two ways that they could, what they people could do, celebrities and athletes and some of that, to help the war effort. Number one was war bonds. Excuse me. So if you've seen the first Captain America movie, when he goes out into the crowds, he's saying, "Oh, every bullet, every dollar you gives so many bullets to our soldiers," and things like that. And those little ladies singing and dancing behind them. That's the war bond rallies that they would have, and they were pretty effective. They really were. And so celebrities, actors, and athletes, they would go off into these rallies and take pictures and tell people the importance of buying these bonds. And about 20 million Americans bought war bonds, and they raised about $17 billion at that time, which was pretty impressive. The other thing they could do was give public service announcements, give tips to people. Go on the radio saying, "Hey, this is Charlie Chaplin saying to don't forget to recycle all your aluminum goods because we can use that scrap metal to make bullets and things like that for our soldiers and la la la." As you see from this, let me move this camera thing here. As you see from that poster, don't waste bread. Save two slices every day and defeat the U boats. Why? Because, hey, the less food we have to give to the citizens, the more we can give to the soldiers. You know, they need the food to fight and things like that. And they would tell people, don't forget, this is a sacrifice. We know you have to sacrifice, on using gasoline and, how much you eat and, what you buy and things like that. But those guys out there are fighting for their lives. You're just asked to make a small change of convenience in your lifestyle. We're not asking much. We're asking these guys to give their lives. So the least you could do, since you're not fighting, is do this for them. Okay. So that's the kind of things they did. So here's my question to you. Let me put the little video back to the corner. So here's my question to you. If there was another war going on right now, do you think actors, singers, athletes, celebrities, do you think they should serve our country as soldiers? Or do you think they should, do like those people did? Raise money, entertain the troops, things like that. So let's say LeBron James. Do you think if there was a war bust out that he should, go through boot camp, through training to fight as a soldier? Or should he be used to help raise money for the troops, entertain the troops, because hey, those guys are that fight, they should be able to come and watch an exhibition, basketball game. What do you think? What's your belief? Okay. So think about it, write it down. Okay. Once you're done with this question, you're done with this lecture. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully, um, now you'll maybe give those movies a chance. Maybe look up some of these guys, research them. Because again, there's a lot of soldiers that weren't mentioned, and they did some amazing things. Also, you should be getting a worksheet that says trench. It has like a diagram of a trench. Okay, be sure you get that done. Okay. Also, your vocab, your research paper, make sure you get those done as well, guys. Okay. So, with that being said, you guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later.